Peace and love, guys. And today I'm going to tell the story of Upali. Now, back when the Buddha was around and he was just getting known and just getting started, he a lot of his teachings went in opposition of another group of another religious sect called the Jainists. Now, you've probably heard of Jainism, but it's a section of Eastern religion that was founded by this man named Nadaputa. Now, Jainism and Buddhism, at like their core, have very different views on what causes negativity and what creates bad karma and bad actions on this planet. And so this story really shows the difference between them. And so basically what happens is there's this man, his name is Diga Tapasi, and he is a disciple of Nadaputa. And he goes and he sees the Buddha meditating one day, and he sits down with him, and he asks him some questions. Now, they're talking, and the Buddha says to him, well, how does Nadaputa classify negativity? How does he classify negative actions? And Tapasi says, Nadaputa does not classify these. He classifies three, and he calls them rods. And rods, he means it just like how we would say like we use a rod to punish a child. Rod can be viewed as the word punishment. And so he says there are three rods. There are bodily rods, there are verbal rods, and there are mental rods. And so, and then the Buddha asks, and of these three, which is the worst? And Tapasi says, well, of course, it's the bodily rods, because our bodily actions are the ones that bind us the furthest, the closest to this earth. And what about you? He says to the Buddha. And he says, how do you classify the rods? And the Buddha does kind of the opposite, and he says, well, instead, I don't call them rods, I call them actions. And I say there are three actions. There are bodily actions, mental actions, and verbal actions. And of these three, the worst is mental action, for intention is above all else. Now, Tapasi finishes talking with him, says goodbye, and goes to this gathering with Nadaputa and all these other disciples. Nadaputa is talking with a bunch of lay people. And a lay person is someone like you or me, someone who isn't a monk, but who practices or tries to follow in their daily life, right? Now, he tells Nadaputa what happens, and Nadaputa praises him. He says, good job, man, you responded just like a good disciple would. I appreciate what you said. That fool, though, how can he say that mental action is above bodily when we know that our physical actions are what bind us to this earth? And there's this man. He's a lay person. His name is Upali, and he says, that fool Buddha, I'm going to go there, I'm going to sit with him, and I'm going to show him how he's wrong, right? And, of course, Tapasi knows Gautama. He knows how he is. And he says, I don't know, man. And he looks at Nadaputa and he says, dude, do we really want to let him go, Upali go, and speak with Gautama? Gautama, he's a crafty man. He's going to work his magic on Upali, and he might convince him to become a Buddhist. And Nadaputa says, no. This religion, this way of life, this discipline is so powerful. In fact, I think that the Buddha will be the one who is converted to Jainism. That he will become a Nagantha alongside us, right? And Nagantha means naked ascetic or naked monk, right? And so Tapasi backs off and he's like, all right, man, you're the boss. You're not a Buddha. You started Jainism. I'm going to listen to you because I believe in you and I believe in what's going on. So Upali goes off and he goes and he walks until he finds the Buddha. And he says, hello there, how are you doing? And they sit down and they start speaking to each other. And Upali says to him, so I heard that you believe that mental action, that intention, is more powerful in terms than bodily action, than hurting or killing another thing. And he says, well, how can this be, right? And the Buddha, he brings up several different examples to prove Upali wrong, but I'm going to share with you my favorite. He says, well, so imagine that a Nigantha, and again, a Nigantha is a follower of Nadaputa, a Jainist, and he says, imagine that a Nigantha was to walk through a field, and during the course of walking through the field, he was to step on some insects and kill them. Now, according to Jainism, and your beliefs, if that Nigantha killed those bugs but was unaware that they were there, would that be bodily action? And Upali says, well, of course, if he didn't know about it, then there wasn't anything he could have done. He didn't generate any bad karma. He didn't do anything wrong, right? And the Buddha says, well, how can he not have generated bad karma if bodily rods, as you say, are above all other things, right? How can you say that bodily action is above all if it was his intention in that moment that kept him from generating bad karma? If he had intended to kill those insects, would he have generated bad karma? Yes, he absolutely would have, said Upali. He would have killed a living creature, which goes against our sect, which goes against our beliefs. You cannot kill living creatures on this planet. And the Buddha says, well, then you've answered the question for yourself. Because if it is his intention that is what is keeping him from generating that bad karma, then it is indeed mental action, or, as you say, mental rods, which is above bodily. And Upali, he's shocked, because he realizes, yeah, this guy's right. It's actually, it's the intention that's the most important, not the action, right? Now, before I continue on with the story, I want to talk about the moral of it, the deep underlying goal of the message. And that's intention, because intention is important than anything else. Because people are human. You have to understand, you are human, I am human, and we make mistakes. But what's important is that you're trying. As long as you're trying to be a good person, and you're trying to make an effort to change something in this world, and you're just doing your best, it's all right. Because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to say stupid stuff. Things are going to happen, and it's going to suck sometimes. But what's important is that you have, and you keep that intention strong within you. And within you, you realize, I am a spiritual being. I am here to enact change. I am here to prove to the world that there are good people. I am here to prove to the world that we aren't all screwed up, right? And I can do that every single day with my intentions, and through them, my actions. Because if I make every attempt to be a good person, and I make every attempt to do the things that I believe are my personal convictions, then regardless of the mistakes that I make, I'm doing better than most people. And that's the important thing. That's the thing that you have to keep close to yourself and remember. Now, getting back to the story. So after the Buddha convinces Upali that he's wrong, that this strain of thought that actions are more important than intentions, that if I was to hurt somebody and I hadn't been intending to, that it would be just as bad as if I had intended to do it. After he's shown him that he's wrong, Upali decides to become a Buddhist. He bows down to the Buddha. He accepts him entirely, and he says that he's going to start turning away the Niganthas, turning away the Jainists, and only allowing the Buddhists into his home. And the Buddha says, no, you shouldn't do that. You've been with the Jainists for a very long time. You should never turn them away from your home. You should continue to give them alms. And alms are, they're like food donations or clothing donations. They're stuff that that monks ask for that they need, like food and all of those things. And the people of the area provide for them. Just like how in America we provide for the priests through donations and tithes. And so he says, no, these people have helped you for a long time. You should continue to give them alms. You should continue to allow them to eat here. And, well, that convinces Upali even more that this is the man he should be listening to. Because, well, not only is he saying these things that are resonating with Upali on a deep level, but he's also telling him to continue to give alms to a different sect, to a different religion, someone who actually opposes the Buddha's views and opposes the things that he is doing. So Upali goes back to his, I'll call it a castle. It's not exactly a castle. He's a really wealthy, and he has a lot of servants, and he has a really big household. So he goes back to his castle, and he tells the guards who guard the front of the castle, he says, from now on, whenever the Jainists come, whenever the Niganthas come to the castle, I do not want you to let them in. You should still give them food, you should still give them alms, but if they ask to come in, I don't want you to let them. However, if any Buddhists come asking for alms, then I want you to allow them in, give them seating, and give them the alms that they ask for. Now, Upali is really well known. He's this wealthy man, and he's one of Nadapuda's biggest disciples. So it very quickly comes around to Nadapuda that he has started turning away Niganthas and allowing Buddhists into his home. So, of course, he doesn't believe it. He doesn't believe that this man who was such a good disciple, such a good lay disciple, would turn away from him like this. And he's honestly kind of hurt by it. So he goes and he gathers a group of his disciples, a group of people, and they all go together to Upali's castle, to his home. And they meet one of the guardsmen and say, hey, we want to come in. And the guardsman says, I can't let you in. I'm sorry, sir, but if you want, you can wait here and I can go and get you some alms for all of you. And Nadapuda says, what is this? This is a home that I've been invited to many times, that I was very respected for, and now you're turning me away? I would like to see the head of the household. I would like to see Upali. So the guardsman goes, and he grabs Upali, and talks to him, and Upali says, bring him into the meeting room. And he has this big meeting room that he hosts a lot of big, gatherings of people in. And there's this beautiful chair, this big seat at the end of the table. And beforehand, Upali would always let Nadapuda sit on the chair, and he would take a side chair because of how much he respected the man. But this time, Upali sits in the big, beautiful chair himself, and has Nadapuda sit on the side. And Nadapuda takes this deeply as a deep insult. And so they're talking, and Nadapuda is just like, what's going on? I thought you told me that you were going to go there and change that Gautama's mind. I thought you were going to go and convince him that he was wrong. And Upali says, well, I did go there with that intention, sir. I went there and I spoke with him. And the more I spoke with him and the more stories he told me, the more I realized that I was wrong. I realized that it is indeed intention which is above action, right? I realized that it is indeed up to us internally to make the decision to commit bad karma. And of course, not a Buddha, he's heard this all before. He's heard the teachings of the Buddha, and he finds it ridiculous, like absolutely ridiculous. And then the story gets a little extreme. It says that he's so disgusted by this, especially because Upali starts calling the Buddha all of these beautiful terms like his exaltedness, his holiness, all of these various different, there's like 20 of them. He really just kind of uptalks the Buddha. And he says that the story says that Nadaputa is so disgusted by this that he actually vomits blood. And that's where the story ends. Now, like I was saying before, the most important thing, the thing that this story is trying to tell you, and I'm sure you're understanding it, is that it's up to you to commit evil deeds. Absolutely. But evil deeds don't happen by accident, right? You don't accidentally commit evil. You may accidentally hurt someone. You may accidentally do something wrong, but you cannot commit an evil act without intentionally deciding to hurt, without intentionally deciding to maim, without intentionally deciding to take away someone else's rights, something else's rights, whether that's the right to life, whether that's the right to their home, whether that's the right to anything. You cannot commit evil unintentionally. And so I leave you with a call to action. And that call is try. I know it's hard to be a strong person. I know it's hard to take a stand for what you believe in and what you believe is right. But the fact that it's hard is what makes it worth it. Because there are so few people out there that are standing for their convictions. There are so few people out there who are willing to stand for their rights, to stand for their beliefs, to stand for how they believe the world should be. And you can be one of them. And this doesn't mean, I'm not telling you to go out there and protest or go out there and make anything major happen. I'm just saying you yourself make the change that you believe should be in the world. That's all I'm asking. Because you see, change, it starts with the individual. And the individual is you. Please like and subscribe and tell me what you think about these videos. Seriously, I would love to hear your feedback. And have a beautiful day.